So guys, version 4.3 is almost here and a lot of players are already wondering which banner is actually the most worth pulling for. Based on the current rumors, Phase 1 is expected to feature mortenax blade and yaoguang, while Phase 2 could bring back phainon and cyrene. Now before we start, I just want to remind you that everything in this video is purely my personal opinion based on the current meta and my own experience playing the game. So if you disagree with some of my takes, that's completely fine. Everyone values character differently. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get into the version 4.3 gacha recommendations. First, let's talk about the new character banner coming in the next version, and of course, that means mortenax blade. Overall, mortenax blade is a fire-type character and the nihility pet, and his main role is basically an important debuffer support for the team, especially for acheorn teams that really need nihility characters. But even though his main job is supporting and debuffing enemies, his damage output is honestly no joke either. Mortenax Blade's biggest strength comes from his ultimate kit. Basically, once you activate this ultimate, all enemies get inflicted with a debuff called Balefire Bind. Enemies affected by it lose 30% defense and also take 50% more damage for 2 turns. And that's not even the craziest part. After using his ultimate, Mortenax Blade creates Special Zone. While this zone is active, he enters Infinite Fury state. In this form, his critical rate goes up by 20%, his critical damage increases by 60%, he unlocks a special skill, and his ultimate changes into a much stronger version. So basically, this ultimate does not just weaken enemies heavily, it also massively buffs his own kit at the same time. He also has another insanely valuable ability. While the zone is active, all allies deal 50% more damage. Then if there's another nihility character on the team besides Mortenax Blade, ally ultimate damage gets boosted by 75%. But if there is not, then Mortenax Blade himself gets a 75% damage increase. And honestly, this is what makes Mortenax Blade so cool. The effect changes depending on your team composition, making him flexible enough to work as a dedicated support for acheorn or even for follow-up attack teams. So why is follow-up attack synergy still good with him despite the nerf? Because every time allies attack enemies, the enemies receive Balefire Bind and Blade gains 1 charge. Once he stacks 9 charges, he immediately launches extra skill at the enemy. So characters that constantly trigger follow-up attacks are naturally amazing with Mortenax Blade. Just from these abilities alone, it's obvious that he has huge potential with characters like acheorn, who rely heavily on ultimate damage, or Ashwell, who focuses on follow-up attacks. So if you already own or plan to get characters like acheorn, Ashwell, 3B or Hyacinth, then this character is honestly a must pull. He's basically 3B with more damage and without access to DDD. And the fact that his signature light count is not that great, even after the buff it got, these max hit LC options are easily accessible to most players. For example, like Tutorial or Sweat Pearls. His base eidolon is E2, where his 75% follow-up attack buff is located, but fortunately his E1 is not that great, so I guess you don't have to get confused in choosing between his S1 or E1. His E0 with 4-star LC is already good. With a kit this flexible and this strong, I'm giving him 9.5 out of 10. In other words, he's extremely worth pulling. Now after Mortenax Blade, let's move on to the character finally getting their first rerun, yaoguang. Overall, this physical elation character is basically the definition of a must-have support if you want to build an elation team in version 4. So is she really that good? Honestly, yes. Yaoguang is one of the most important characters you can own in version 4 right now, especially if you want your elation team to perform at its absolute best. Her skill is incredibly important because it boosts the team's elation level and massively increases overall elation damage. On top of that, every time yaoguang uses a basic attack or skill, she generates 3 punch lines, making them much easier to stack. And her ultimate, honestly, it's insanely good. Her ultimate instantly triggers AHA without waiting for turns, meaning every elation characters on the team can immediately activate their elation skill, and trust me, that matters a lot. Triggering elation skill helps characters like Silver Wolf or Evanesia feel punchlined or certified banger much faster, which basically works like restoring energy for them. Yaoguang's ultimate also gives the whole team additional all-type resistance penetration, which pushes the team's damage output even higher. She's also a great investment if future elation character main source of damage is gonna be based on their elation skill. With Yao's ultimate that can proc AHA instance multiple times, she's really worth it for that unit. Disclaimer if this unit is turned out to be real. She also has a really useful trait for SP hungry elation teams because every time she triggers elation skill, she restores 1 skill point. That's especially useful for characters that burn through SP like Sparksy. 1 SP may not be that impactful, but it's still something that we should appreciate from her. Not only for Sparksy team, her SP recovery can also be useful in EVA teams, where usually both EVA and EMC almost use their skill every time their turn arrives. So if you are still wondering whether she's worth pulling, the answer is absolutely yes, and the in-game statistics prove it too. Okay, this might not be the sole reason for you to pull her, but it's actually a good evidence of why most players need her. Yaoguang's usage rates are insanely high right now, both 33% in MOC and Pure Fiction, and 49% in Apocalyptic Shadow, and 52% in Anomaly Arbitration. Those numbers alone show that nearly half of the current Honkai Star Rail player base is actively using her. That's honestly crazy. Overall, yaoguang is currently one of the best support options for EMC to support Indonesia, or even alongside Sparksy in Silver Wolf level 999 teams. Without yaoguang, your elation team's performance will drop massively and won't reach its full damage potential. If you have not pulled her, at least her is 0, because you might think that there will be another new elation support that might replace her. That's actually a possibility, but that doesn't mean it's going to be true or real. The point is, if you have at least one elation DPS right now, like Eva or Super Wolf, it is the right time for you to start consider her to be in your account. So with a kit this powerful, I'm confidently giving her 9 out of 10. Easily one of the most recommended pulls in version 4.3. Alright, now we are getting into the section most people have been waiting for, the rerun characters in Phase 2 of version 4.3. And first, let's talk about phainon, the physical destruction hyper carry who's currently considered one of the strongest physical DPS units. Overall, phainon is a physical destruction character with a really unique mechanic tied to his ultimate that allows him to fight completely alone on the battlefield. But to fully unlock his base damage potential, you need to activate his ultimate first and then use his insanely strong enhanced skill. To make that happen consistently, you need teammates that can buff him, like Sunday, Bronya, or Saridra. That's because phainon needs to receive allies buff in order to build special points called Core Flame. Once Core Flame reaches 12 stacks, phainon transforms through his ultimate, forcing all allies to leave the battlefield and leaving him to fight solo. During this transformation, he also creates a territory that gives enemies physical weakness, which is honestly amazing for endgame content, even against enemies that normally don't have physical weakness. And there's more, during his transform state, phainon gets 8 special actions, and on the 8th turn, he unleashes a final hit on enemies before ending both the territory and transformation mode. So is he worth pulling in version 4.3? Honestly, I think phainon has fallen off pretty hard since his release back in version 3.4. Even though his damage is still huge and he can apply physical weakness, his overall performance is starting to lag behind the current elation meta characters. And unlike those newer meta units, phainon requires a much more restrictive setup since he depends heavily on teammates buffing him. If you look at the user statistics, his usage numbers are honestly pretty low now, 14% in MOC, 13% in Pure Fiction, and 6% in Apocalyptic Shadow, and 18% in Anomaly Arbitration. Those numbers clearly shows that his usage has dropped a lot and his kit does not fit the current meta as smoothly anymore. And there's another important thing you need to know. If you really want to maximize phainon's potential, you basically need his signature icon, because the performance gap between it and the free-to-play option on the fall of the Aeon is massive. That's why this character is not very beginner-friendly or free-to-play friendly, at least for now. But if you want, you can invest in his Eidolons, at least E2. Then he is still a worthy DPS and making him value even higher. So in the end, phainon have a score of 7.5 out of 10, but E2 he can be 8 or even 8.5. Disclaimer once again, this is my personal opinion only. And finally, let's talk about the last character rumored for version 4.3, Cyrene. As we already know, Cyrene is an Ice Remembrance character who uses a Memo Sprite shaped from her own memories. What makes Cyrene unique is her Memo Sprite scale system, which gives different buffs depending on the character, especially Chrysos heirs. She also has a skill that creates a zone causing all ally attacks to deal additional true damage, equal to 20% of the damage dealt. The effect is honestly very similar to the true damage from RMC's Memo Sprite skill. The difference is that Cyrene buffs the entire team, while RMC only buffs one character. And the craziest part, her true damage multiplier can become even stronger if you own her Eidolon too, making the skill feel insanely powerful. Cyrene also has an ultimate that uses a special resource called Recollection. This resource is generated whenever allies and Memo Sprites consume future, whenever Cyrene takes her turn. That mechanic works especially well with Remembrance characters because both the character and Memo Sprite can generate Recollection points together. To activate her ultimate, Cyrene needs 24 Recollection points. Once activated, she summons her Memo Sprite, and immediately activates all ally ultimates the first time it's used, and enters a special state. This state upgrades her basic attack and becomes enhanced. Even though this version of her ultimate can only be used once per battle, it grants Cyrene an extra 50% critical rate and removes the duration limit from her zone effect. That's honestly amazing for free-to-play characters because it lowers the amount of crit rate needed in her build. She also has a second ultimate version that only requires 12 recollection points. This version lets her Memo Sprite immediately take action to attack enemy or buff allies. She's undeniably a strong character. She can provide huge buffs to the entire team and special buffs to Chrysos' heir. The problem is that outside of Chrysos' heir, or teams that heavily focus on the Remembrance path, she does not perform as smoothly as other support characters, because building recollection points takes much longer. So if your account does not have many Chrysos' heir, she's not bad, but her value might feel lower compared to some of the other characters available in version 4.3. So is Cyrene worth pulling in version 4.3? Right now I would personally give her an 8 out of 10, but her score will be increased to 9.5 if we invest in her eidolon, especially her E2. Alright guys, that's it for the version 4.3 who to pull guide or pull recommendations. What do you guys think? Which character are you planning to pull next patch? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button, turn notification as well so you won't be missing out on any of my Star Rail content. I will see you guys on my next one. Bye bye!